Thanks for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a Paris court gives a 25-year jail sentence for genocide to a Rwandan ex-spy chief accused in the 1994 mass killing. People have been waiting eagerly for news of the Paris jury's decision. Pascal Simbikangwa's last appeal to those who judge him, see him, call on their conscience. Also, France expresses its impatience with the European Union over its promise in January to deliver a peacekeeping mission to Central African Republic. That's to back up French and African troops already on the ground trying to stem escalating sectarian violence. And whilst leaders from across the world try to settle on a political or military solution to the bloodshed in Central African Republic, here in France, a small troop of actors from the troubled African nation are also trying to make a difference with their latest show. First up, Central African Republic's parliament started drafting a constitution aimed at restoring peace. Thousands of French and African troops are already there trying to stop bloody revenge attacks that have driven tens of thousands of Muslims out of the country. Now, that was first sparked by a short-lived but bloody takeover by Muslim rebels last year. Today, France angrily warned the EU that its promise to mobilise a peacekeeping mission by next week is behind schedule because some European countries haven't provided the troops and resources pledged. Arnaud Danjean is a French Euro MP for the UMP. He tells us that expectations for a quick deployment of European Union troops was always unrealistic.
I think first that there was a huge misunderstanding between the French and the others. The French ministers, the very French minister who are complaining today that the process is too slow, were the first to announce a month and a half ago that the EU operation would be deployed in Central Africa within less than a month, which is totally impossible. It has never happened before. When you want to set up an EU military operation, you need at least 3 months before the announcement, the political agreement, and the effective deployment on the ground. Having said that, there is a problem indeed. Do the European countries really want to commit troops for an operation in Central Africa? And we can have our doubts, indeed. Many countries do not feel that the situation in Central Africa, as tragic as it is, constitutes a kind of a threat to our security. So they believe that there are other priorities now, especially when we talk about Ukraine. So you have many northern and eastern European countries who were at first ready to commit troops, who are now more reluctant, more hesitant, because their public opinion also is really wondering why they should put a priority in Central Africa when you have this situation going on in Ukraine.
Arnaud Danjean there speaking to us. He's also the leader of the European Parliament's sub-defence community. Now, there were hours of gunfire and explosions in Maiduguri earlier Friday as soldiers fought off Islamist insurgents attacking the city. Extremist fighters suspected of being from Nigerian sect Boko Haram targeted army barracks trying to free suspected militants being held there. The city's university and homes of government workers were also hit. Now, the military claims to have killed several of the attackers and succeeded in repelling the raid. Well, here in Paris, after 5.5 weeks, the jury in France's first trial of a suspect in the Rwandan genocide has sentenced Pascal Simbikangwa to a 25-year jail sentence for his role in the 1994 mass killings. In his final appeal on Friday, former spy chief Simbikangwa had insisted that he was innocent of complicity in genocide and war crimes during the 1994 atrocities, claiming he never even saw any of the dead bodies that littered Rwanda's streets after the mass killing of around 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus. But the court was unconvinced. France 24's Yves Irvine is there for us. Yves, so what was said as the sentence was handed down?
Well, indeed, 25 years in prison for Pascal Simbikangwa, the jury finding him guilty of genocide and guilty in complicity of crimes against humanity. Indeed, according to the jury's conclusions, they did not believe him when he said he didn't see one corpse in the entirety of the genocide. They also found it especially hard to swallow contradictions he made in his testimony. At first, he said that he never left his home throughout the violence of 1994. He later changed that to say, yes, in fact, he had left his home, so he might have been spotted in the streets of Kigali, but he was really only going out to gain provisions to provide for the Tutsis he was hiding at home, because indeed, on a number of occasions during the trial, Simbikangwa said that not only did he not take part in the violence, but in fact, he tried to save a number of Tutsis by hiding them. Now, the jury did believe the 58 witness statements that was presented to them throughout the last 6 weeks. They believe that enough witnesses, even if there were some contradictions in the statements that they gave to the court, that enough people had the same story, that they saw Pascal Simbikangwa deliver weapons to checkpoints and indeed give militia their orders to kill any Tutsi who passed, that this left them without any reasonable doubt that he was guilty of genocide, and indeed sentenced him to that 25 years in prison. Pascal Simbikangwa now has 10 days in which to lodge an appeal.
Now, this was a historic trial for France. It had faced a lot of criticism for taking so long to prosecute any Rwandan genocide suspects living here. Is this sentence going to appease critics, and is France likely to see more cases like it?
Well, indeed, there's over 20 cases due before the courts in France within the next few years. There's at least 2 who will basically have to be tried by 2015 because they're currently in prison, and within 4 years of investigation they have to be tried or set free. Indeed, as you mentioned, France has been criticised. The European Court of Human Rights chastised the country back in 2004 for its tardiness on the affair. The first ever charges were pressed here back in 1995, and that was against a priest who currently lives in the north of the country, but who has yet to appear before the courts. Alain Gauthier, speaking just after the verdict fell here on Friday, said that for him 25 years was too light a sentence. He said he couldn't feel any sense of relief as yet, but saw this as the first step. It's the first verdict here in France, and one he hopes will lead to many more.
Thanks very much. Yvan van der Forest at court in Paris. As the world's political elite wrangle out a way forward in trying to bring an end to Central African Republic's crisis, here in Paris, a small troupe of artists are playing their own part in trying to bring about reconciliation in their homeland. Lingua Terra came to France after the cultural centre they ran in Bangui was destroyed, but even from afar, they hope to make a difference. Ben Barnier has more.
They call to their gods for help as their homeland is torn apart by violence and hate. Sango the Encounter, a Central African play currently showcasing in France. The actors, Muslims and Christians, sending a strong message of peace while their communities are fighting and killing each other.
Me, am I a Christian, a Muslim? I just say I'm a Central African because religions were imported into our region through colonization and through conquests. We received these religions, but we already had a religion, animism. We had gods, we prayed to the trees.
In our troupe we have Muslims, Christians and others. Some members don't even have a religion. But this doesn't stop us from performing together. Our example is the one Central Africans should follow.
Written in 1992, the play was recently updated to make it even more compelling, adding to the script references to machetes, the weapon of choice of fighters in the country's recent crisis.
These days, the machete symbolizes death and atrocities. Our ancestors did not teach us this violence. We're not saying that it's the anti-Balaka or Seleka's fault. We're just trying to get symbols on stage to show people what's happening in our country, to tell them that the path we're taking isn't the right one.
After their tour in France, the actors are hoping to embark on a caravan for peace, taking their hopes for reconciliation into remote parts of the Central African Republic.
That wraps up African News from me. I'll be back with more next week. Take care.